Hello and welcome to the Rundown, where we talk about 2A news and conservative views. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. But as we all know, I do not do this program by myself. Well, actually, once again today, looks like I am doing the program by myself. But hey, you know what? At least it's Taco Tuesday.
It's raining tacos from out of the sky. Tacos, no need to ask why. Just open your mouth and close your eyes. It's raining tacos.
It's raining tacos out in the street. Tacos, all you can eat. Lettuce and shells, cheese and meat. It's raining tacos. Yum, 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 yum.
That's right, folks. It's Taco Tuesday. We like to celebrate Taco Tuesday because, well, you know, if there's a meal that pretty much describes the quintessential melting pot that is the United States, I gotta say, it's the taco, because the American taco is very different than the traditional Mexican taco, but it's wholly American. You know what I mean? It's like an example of taking what America is. We take the best of the world and we've taken it and made it our own until it's something completely different and quite enjoyable. So anyway, that's why I like Taco Tuesday. But unfortunately, Mike is once again flying the friendly skies today. Unfortunately for us, not necessarily unfortunately for him, because I'm sure he is enjoying making a little cash, as well as, you know, being out there once again, flying the friendly skies. But with that, we're going to go ahead and get the program rolling. And as usual, it's going to start with a shout out to our sponsors. And we'll start with Hitman Industries. You'll find them at hitmanindustries.net. If you've purchased an AR recently, chances are you already have one of their barrels. But hey, does that really matter? If you want to rebarrel your current AR, or maybe you want to do a new build, why don't you go ahead and go over to hitmanindustries.net and get your new barrel today. Also, California Republican Assembly. Ronald Reagan referred to them as the conscience of the Republican Party, helping to elect conservatives from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Be a part of California's future today. Become a member of the California Republican Assembly. You'll find them at cragop.org. At cragop.org. And then there is Hog Holsters, helping America wear guns. You can find them at hogholsters.com. The best conceal carry tactical holsters that you will find. And you can get them with a discount code, The Rundown, all caps, no spaces, at hogholsters.com. And finally, veteran owned and operated. If you're looking for outdoor gear, if you're looking for wet weather gear, because I know in California it's about to be raining for almost a week straight. If you're looking for whatever type of tactical outdoor camping, whatever type of gear you're looking for, they have it. Once again, low prices and integrity, quick shipping. Check out the folks right there at uscombatgear.com. Okay, now we can get into today's topics, and we're going to start. Many of you have probably watched the January 6th committee hearing, or not January 6th, or you probably watched, listened to, or read or heard reports of the January 6th committee. And you know that the committee hearings that were done, especially the ones that were done in prime time, were highly produced. They actually hired a TV producer to produce these videos in order to increase the emotional impact that people would have when viewing these videos that came out of January 6th committee. Well, Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, decided to release all of the video surveillance that was available, something like 41,000 hours that was available. He decided to release it all to Tucker Carlson and his producers. And in order to show people everything that was going on there that day, because as we know, the January 6th committee only put out the stuff that pushed their agenda. And they definitely, by the way, had an agenda. Their agenda was to make Donald Trump look like an insurrectionist and anyone who supported him to look like a crazy insurrectionist. By the way, before I get into this, I am going to tell you, yes, there were violent actions that took place that day. And there were people who were Trump supporters or claimed to be Trump supporters who were engaged in those activities that were illegal, that were wrong, and should be prosecuted. So let me be clear. That's where I stand. Now, I also believe that overwhelmingly, the people who supported, who were part of the bigger event, which Donald Trump spoke at, the overwhelming majority of them were peaceful and engaged in no illegal or violent activity, right? I also believe that the majority of the people who went over to the Capitol, for which they, by the way, they did have a permit to actually have an event there at the Capitol afterwards. Once again, I believe the overwhelming majority of them were both peaceful and engaged in no illegal activity. There were people who engaged in some illegal activity, and for the most part, I believe that you're seeing a bunch of them, or many of them, are part of the somewhere around 800 people who have been charged and are in the process of being prosecuted, supposedly prosecuted or persecuted, however you want to look at it, for what happened during January 6th. But the video that was released that was put out, Tucker Carlson made it a point to go through some of that video. Now, what I will say is this: there were some things that Tucker Carlson said, and the reason why I don't want to put all of his stuff out there is because there were some things he said with which I disagree. There were some narratives that I think he put out there that I'm not saying aren't true, but I will say that aren't. Nothing you see in the video that he presented supports or provides evidence to the things that he is saying in some of his statements. So I wanted to make sure to put that out there. But there were two particular narratives that I wanted to bring up. And the first had to do with this gentleman who's known as the shaman, the January 6th shaman, the MAGA shaman, or whatever you want to call him. Because if you listen to how the media portrays him, you would think that this was an evil, evil dude who was doing harm and was hunting down people in the Capitol and was defying law enforcement in all that he did on that day. But the video that's available actually tells a very, very different story, or at least the video as put together by Tucker Carlson. So I want you to take a look at this real quick, and we'll talk about it on the flip side.
But according to our review of the internal surveillance video, it is very clear what happened once he got inside. Virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape. The tapes show that Capitol Police never stopped Jacob Chansley. They helped him. They acted as his tour guides. Here's video of Chansley in the Senate chamber. Capitol Police officers take him to multiple entrances and even try to open locked doors for him. We counted at least 9 officers who were within touching distance of unarmed Jacob Chansley. Not one of them even tried to slow him down. Chansley understood that Capitol Police were his allies. Video shows him giving thanks for them in a prayer on the floor of the Senate. Watch.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving the inspiration needed to these police officers to allow us in this building.
Contrast the reality of what Jacob Chansley did in the Capitol building on January 6th, the indisputable facts recorded on video, some of which has never before been seen, with the depiction of Jacob Chansley that you've seen in the media for more than 2 years. He's a terrorist, they said. He should be killed.
Shoot him. Shoot him. Like, you burst into the United States, if he was dressed like bin Laden, would you have shot him?
Shoot him. Shoot him. It makes you wonder, who are the violent extremists here? Not Jacob Chansley. And the video proves that.
All right, so let's be clear. You can see from all of the video evidence that he was escorted into the Senate chambers by law enforcement, by Capitol Police. Now, I don't know exactly what the full context was, but once again, this was not an individual who was running roughshod over law enforcement. I mean, this guy got 4 years for what he did. Now, if you want to understand the context, or just how the context of that, right? There's a guy here in Sacramento who was involved in a mass shooting with an illegally altered firearm, who served about that same amount of time, even though he was sentenced in California, even though he was sentenced to 10 years. Yeah, same thing. There are violent criminals. And I think we can see from this video, and I haven't seen any video out there that shows him engaging in anything violent at all. If there's video out there, I'm more than happy. If you guys want to share it in the comments, if you want to show him being involved in violent activity, please do. Now, he says that Tucker Carlson says earlier in that piece that he doesn't, it's disputed how he got in. I don't think it's disputed, because in the video that he shows right there, you see him coming in when the first group of people break through the door. So I don't know if he was part of breaking in the door, but I do know he was one of the first ones in when the door was broken in. So that, that's inconsistent with what Tucker Carlson said. But I once again, here's a narrative that was pushed over and over again by the January 6th committee, by the mainstream media. You saw the list of people, the number of people who were insistent. I mean, you had people saying, you had that one guy saying, Steve Schmidt, by the way, that's who that was, a Republican turncoat that was like, shoot him, telling them to kill him. Someone who was escorted into the Senate chambers by law enforcement. I'm assuming maybe he's saying that they should have just shot the guy in the back. I mean, that seems to be what he is insinuating. Maybe they should have just shot that guy in the back. But all that aside, that's not one of the worst. So one of the other narratives that we continually hear is that people died, that people were killed, right, on January 6th. Now, to be clear, there was only one person who died on January 6th, and that was Ashley Babbitt. She was unarmed, and she was shot by an armed Capitol policeman who admitted that he did not see whether or not she was armed. So this is what we know. And by the way, there's been very little investigation. As far as the public can tell, there's been very little investigation, and the officer who shot and killed her has faced no real penalties, despite him confirming that he did not know whether or not she was armed. But he's faced absolutely no penalty. So when Tucker Carlson says she was murdered, I think that's an opinion that's not necessarily supported by the facts, once again, of any video that was released or that Tucker Carlson put out. Now, once again, I'm not saying there's not other evidence. I'm just saying it's not supported by any of the video that he put out there, and which is odd because I don't know why Tucker led with that particular narrative. But one piece of narrative that he led with that I thought was really good, and that was that a lot of people say, officers died. No, the one officer that they kept pointing to was Officer Sicknick, right? Officer Sicknick was supposedly died on that day, right? They said he was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher, and as a result of that, he was killed. That was debunked in literally in almost 24 hours by a local news station, but it wasn't till months. It took months for the New York Times to update its story to actually point to the cause of death as to other factors. Now, mind you, they didn't rewrite the story or write a new story about the change in the cause of death. They went and updated, and this was like in March of 2021. They went back and updated and put a little asterisk, a little update to their story from the beginning of January. So basically no one saw it is what they did. But still, even today in the media, you get this reporting that Officer Sicknick died and was a result of what happened. And even some people say, well, the injuries that were caused to him caused him to die later. But the video here kind of shows a little bit different story. Let me show you that part real quick.
Police officers in the meantime.
But Brian Sicknick should not be reduced to a prop for the political ambitions of the Democratic Party. He was a human being. The facts of his life matter, including how he died. To this day, media accounts describe Sicknick as someone who was, quote, slain on January 6th. The video we reviewed proves that is a lie. Here is surveillance footage of Sicknick walking in the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by the mob outside. By all appearances, Sicknick is healthy and vigorous. He's wearing a helmet, so it's hard to imagine he was killed by a head injury. Whatever happened to Brian Sicknick was very obviously not the result of violence he suffered at the entrance to the Capitol. This tape overturns the single most powerful and politically useful lie the Democrats have told us about January 6th.
So we already knew that he didn't directly die as a result of what happened on January 6th. Now we know that he was up, he was around, he was moving, he was functional, he was doing everything, he was still working. Hours after supposedly he had been murdered there at the steps of the Capitol. So now we know once again, only one person died, and they were a Trump supporter, and they died at the hands of law enforcement, of the Capitol security guard. I mean, just that's what we secret. I don't remember if he was Secret Service or if he was Capitol Police, but what we do know was he was armed law enforcement, and he shot an unarmed person. Those are the facts, like it or not. And I still get arguments from people who talk about people died on that day. And once again, this just goes to show the false media narrative, the false narrative that the media is putting out there. It's true. It's true. We know this to be the case. And by the way, January 6th is not the only thing. So here's what we know. Here's what we now know. We now know that, at least from the initial stuff that's being put out there, and if you go and you watch the report by Tucker Carlson, there's tons of pictures of people going through, taking selfies, standing in line. I mean, I am not saying that violence did not occur. I'm not saying that destruction of property didn't occur. I'm not saying that illegal actions did not occur for which people need to be held to account. What I am saying is that you didn't see any of this on the January 6th hearings. In fact, they wanted to shut down. They didn't want any of this stuff to be out there because it ruined their narrative. It ruined the narrative, the highly produced narrative that they are trying to put out there about what occurred on what occurred on January 6th. The same people who put out the narrative of the mostly peaceful George Floyd riots, right? Right, exactly. That's what we're fighting right there. Anyway, moving on to our next story. Newsom says California will boycott Walgreens. I know you're wondering why is Gavin Newsom putting out tweets talking about boycotting Walgreens drugstore. Well, Walgreens has made a decision because there are about 20 states who have issued letters to pharmaceutical companies about the abortion pill. And basically the process, there's a limitation or a restriction on the process of abortion in their states. And those states have reached out to various different, once again, pharmaceutical companies, or not pharmaceutical companies, but providers, people who deliver pharmaceuticals. And they put a lot of pressure on them to tell them, look, if you do this, you are going to be held account in our state. And so in order to be in compliance with the laws of those states, Walgreens has said, you know what? We're not going to supply these drugs to those states. And once again, it's well within their business model. It's well within their rights. In states where it's legal, they got no problems. They're going to go ahead and they're still going to provide it. So they're not taking a political stand. They're taking a legal stand. Well, Gavin Newsom doesn't like that. So he says that the state of California is not going to be doing business with folks like that. Let me see if I can find the exact tweet down here, see if they wound up embedding the tweet in their post. And I see here they did not. So let's go back up to the top. It says here, California is reviewing all relationships between Walgreens and the state. We will not pursue business with companies that cave to right-wing bullies pushing their extremist agenda, or companies that put politics above the health of women and girls. And he was really focusing on you talked about the health of wait. We emphasized our responsibility as state attorneys general to uphold the law and protect the health and safety and well-being of women and their unborn children. So once again, That's what they're talking about. I mean, that's what the folks are. Anyway, oh no, here it is. Here's his tweet. California won't be doing business with at Walgreens or any company that cowers to extremists or puts women's lives at risk. Now, let us be clear. The morning after pill or the abortion pill does not put women's life at risk. I mean, not having access to it through a pharmaceutical company does not put women's lives at risk. Because you're generally, well, at least I'm assuming that if your life is at risk, you need a life-saving procedure, not a pill that's has to be shipped to you and you may receive days or weeks later in order to terminate an abortion. That is not a situation where a woman's life is at risk. Once again, if I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me in the comment section, but I'm willing to bet that nobody's really going to be able to point that out, or at least not come up with any medical facts that are going to dispute that particular assessment, or make political statements. And here's the thing. Is it or is it not hypocritical that here we have someone who is using state policy, who is to take a position with someone, to use politics, right, to pressure a company, to pressure someone into breaking the law? That's exactly what he is doing. He's saying you will either break the law in those other states, or we are going to politically pressure you out of business in the state of California. That's what Gavin Newsom is saying. So he is engaging in the exact same types of political pressure, blackmail, and fear mongering that he is accusing others of. But then again, we all know that Gavin Newsom is not a guy who believes in rules for him. He believes the rules apply to everyone else and not him. That is what the position that dictators take. And we all know that he's a tyrannical dictator. We know that. We know that he will tell everybody else you have to cower at home and you're not allowed to go see your family or be out anywhere, while he goes and meets and eats at the French Laundry with lobbyists, right? With no mask. We know that he does that. We know that he's going to tell kids that they can't participate in sports, while at the same time he's going to go to a basketball game and walk around and pal around with celebrities, once again, while not wearing a mask. We all know that he's going to tell people that, you know what, your kids have to stay at home and go to school via Zoom, while his kids go to a private school where they're able to meet in person. That's Gavin Newsom. That's who we know him to be. So, dude, you are a hypocrite, and you have no credibility as far as any of us in the real world are concerned, right? I hope, and by the way, folks, this is all him posturing to run for governor. That's all this is. He wants to be governor, so he's trying to get out there and try and get his name out there on a national basis. And the reality is that you are a left-wing liberal. No, I won't even say that. Here's the deal. You use left-wing wokeness in order to get your name out there. You are a media whore, is all you are. You are too dumb to understand the issues, so all you do is you read your press clipping, you read your talking points, and you do whatever you can to get your face in front of the media. So, yeah, no, you have no credibility, dude. None. Zero whatsoever. So, shut up and sit down. That's my 2 cents on that. All right, our next item. Oh, here's another one. So this is a bill. The NRA, as well as the Firearms Policy Coalition, California gun owners are opposing a particular measure in the state of California that discriminates against firearm owners. And here's basically what it does. What the bill will do. Here, I'll pull up the article here from Bearing Arms, our good friend Tom Knighton over there at Bearing Arms. So what this bill will do is that there's already a bill that says that you are not allowed to discriminate against, when it comes to investments, you're not allowed to discriminate against companies that engage in legal, lawful business, right? In other words, if they ain't breaking the law, and when it comes to investments and public investments, you are not allowed to discriminate against them. This measure is, here we go, SB 637 by Senator Dave Min, Democrat, big guess. Basically what it does is, well, here, I'll read it to you. The text of the bill, and it attacks the legal business of manufacturing firearms, speaks for itself. SB 637, as introduced, says existing law prohibits certain state trust funds from making or holding investments in business firms or financial institutions that engage in specified discriminatory business practices. This bill would state the intent of the legislature to subsequently amend this bill to introduce provisions that would prohibit financial institutions to do business with gun manufacturers from doing business in the state of California. In other words, since California law currently prohibits state entities from practicing financial discrimination against legal businesses, Min wants the law amended to allow California state agencies to legally discriminate against financial institutions that do business with gun makers. So I actually need to correct what I initially said. This doesn't just go after gun makers. This goes after their banks. So if you are a financial institution, so for example, if you do transactions via credit card, right? If you're a credit card company provider and you process credit card orders for firearm sailors and manufacturers, they get to discriminate against you and say you can't do business with the state of California. Yeah, so in other words, they're trying to not just they have not just gone after gun manufacturers, they're going after those who do business with with firearms manufacturers or firearms retailers. They're trying to make it impossible. They're saying, well, you have a constitutional right to own a firearm, but you don't have a constitutional right to sell one. And you don't have a constitutional right to process credit card transactions or to allow them to bank with you. You don't have a constitutional right to that. So we are now going to discriminate against companies who do business with those who facilitate the exercising of a constitutionally enumerated right. That is what the California state legislature wishes to do. Yeah, that's what Democrats in California want to do. And at the same time, well, they want to tell you, Governor Newsom wants to tell you that California is the freest state in the country. And shut the hell up. You are such a liar. Yes, he is a liar. He is most definitely a liar. But then again, we already kind of knew that. All right, this next one. Oh, you'll love this one. And I picked this story specifically because you guys know Mike is a big fan of baseball. I myself am, I can't even tell you the last time I watched a baseball game. I went to one a few years back, and just baseball's not my thing. I'm sorry, it's just not. I'll go to a baseball game simply because they're good events, they're fun events to go to. But I'm not into Major League Baseball. But you put together Major League Baseball, you put together the Washington Post, the left-wing folks over there at the Washington Post. And then you put together, spring training, and spring training in Florida. Well, and then you get an interesting mix. And then, so in this one, what you have is you have a WAPO writer, last name of Blackstone, who is basically proposing that spring training needs to be moved out of Florida in order to protest DeSantis' attack on diversity. Now, I will just say this. His narrative is beyond false. I cannot even begin to tell you how false his narrative is when it comes to his name. By the way, his name is Kevin B. Blackistone. Blackistone? I hope that's a misspelling. Blackistone is his name. Anyway, first of all, he starts off talking about the issue relating to higher education, and he starts off talking about, they don't want, or not higher education, they don't want to teach black studies. Well, no, they do teach black studies. What they don't want is the woke AP course that included things like queer theory, that included things like the Black Lives Matter organization, which we now know, from which tens of millions of dollars has been filtered for people's personal well-being. And, by the way, an organization that is a clearly political organization that has political goals and ends that are based on the idea of tearing down our culture, our society, tearing down the family, the church, and our civil government and our criminal justice system. So, yeah, no, he did not want that in an advanced placement course, period. And I happen to agree with them because that then amounts to nothing more. It's not education, it's indoctrination. And that's basically what they said. But Florida law still clearly requires them to teach black history, to teach about slavery, to teach about Jim Crow, to teach about the civil rights movement and all of that. So, yeah, no, you don't. That's one lie. Then the other lie is about when it comes to diversity training, what they call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which tend to include things like critical race theory, which tend to include things like basically discrimination. I've said this and I will continue to say this. A lot of what you see in the anti-racism training, anti-racism movement is racist, period. And I would challenge anyone to prove me different. I've got plenty of stuff that I've seen. I know because I've not only have I studied it, but I've been involved in the training. I've been involved in watching the training, and it is a bunch of racist hooey. And I'm not going to allow. I'm not going to support any of that stuff, and they're not going to support any of that stuff. So now you've got these folks pressuring Major League Baseball to move spring training out of Florida. Well, we know what happened the last time they bought into the big lie, and that was when they moved the All-Star game out of Georgia because they said, oh, well, Jim Crow 2.0 is going to discriminate and it's going to keep black people from voting. They moved it to Colorado, which, by the way, had much more restrictive voting laws. Much more restrictive voting laws than does Georgia, then nor now, which was interesting. That they moved it to a more, it was by their own definition, a more racist state. If you use their standard for moving it, they moved it to a clearly more racist state, trying to keep black people from voting. Record numbers of not just people, but record numbers of black people voted. Record numbers of percentage of voters voted in the Florida elections. I mean, not Florida, in the Georgia elections. But, we ignore all that. None of that matters. So now you have the guy over at the WAPO wants to double down on that mistake, or on that fallacy. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it is what it is. It's just, folks, keep in mind once again, and I tell you this not because I'm expecting them to change. Just what I'm hoping is that when you're talking with people that you bring this stuff up, because people need to hear the truth. I'm telling you, there are a lot of people out there who are stuck in the matrix, and they don't know the truth. They've never heard the truth. Nobody's ever told them the truth. And I know you don't want to say anything because some of you're like, look, I just want to live my life. I want to get in the middle of all this stuff. Well, guess what? You need to get in the middle of it. You need to say something because they are now instituting policy based on lies. And if you're not there to say something about it, then you don't get a chance to come. You don't get an opportunity. You shouldn't complain about the policies if you're going to not uproot or come against the lie upon which it is based. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. That's what I got to say. That's all I have to say about that. Anyway. All right, we are now up to our parting shots, brought to you by Hog Holsters, helping America wear guns. Go to hogholsters.com and get your holster today. Make sure to use discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces. Do it today. Do it now. Go there now. All right, this first one is in honor of, once again, the tapes that have been released in the January 6th committee. And I want you to see in this the hypocrisy that can be found in many of the January 6th committee's arguments. So here in the top picture, you've got members of the January 6th committee, led up there by the chairman, Representative Thompson, and then Representative Cheney. It says, "We can't release the surveillance video because it's too violent and horrific for people to see." That's what they were saying initially when Nancy Pelosi was speaker. And now that Kevin McCarthy's released it, here's now what they're saying. Speaker McCarthy released the surveillance video to try and create a false narrative that it was overwhelmingly peaceful. Do you see the hypocrisy? No, do you see the issue here? You see that they can't have it both ways. If it's too horrific for people to see, then how can he create a false narrative that it was mostly peaceful, overwhelmingly peaceful? Nah, it's not a false narrative, folks. I'm not saying there wasn't violence, but the fact, but they don't get to claim, both. They don't. And then there's this one. I love this one. This is got Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. It says, that face you make when video from January 6th proves that you and your committee are liars. And that's pretty much what it did. Yep. That's exactly what it did. So far, it's proven that they are liars. And once again, not so much in that, I'm not trying to push the narrative that nothing happened, but there was a lot of stuff they did not show, a lot of stuff they did not talk about, a lot of stuff that was left out. They deliberately brought in people to edit and produce those videos to make it seem worse than it was, or to make it seem like all hell had broken loose. And I'm serious. Go look at some of that video. Go look at the Tucker Carlson interview. When people start talking about, comparing it to January 6th, or comparing it to the dropping comparing it to Hiroshima, no, not even. I'm sorry, folks, not even close. Not even remotely close. And then there's this last one. And this here you have the media jackals talking about the January 6th lies. He's got the January 6th videos wrapped around his neck, his face, and it says here, strangely, the leftist hyenas aren't cackling. They're not. Well, you have some people in the media who are trying to excuse this, and it's funny because on one interview I saw them basically where the rise where I pulled some of this video from. They were saying, well, if you only allow just the video of the peaceful protest, of the peaceful people walking through the Capitol and just strolling in and being let in by officers, if you only show that, well, then that allows for a false narrative. But what she refused or neglected to point out was, if you only show the violent actions and the destruction of property, then that also creates a false narrative. And by the way, that's exactly what the mainstream media and the January 6th committee did. And when I say that, I mean Democrats and the two liberal left-wing Republicans who decide, left-wing sellouts is what they are, because they both hated Donald Trump. They literally were Trump haters. That's what I'll call them. The group of Trump haters that are the January 6th committee, they clearly sought to present a false narrative. Period. And I think that's kind of indisputable. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me. All right. Time to, before we wrap it up today, to give a shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries. You'll find them at hitmanindustries.net. Get your rifle and pistol caliber barrels today. Also, California Republican Assembly. Be a part of California's future today. Become a member of the California Republican Assembly. Hog Holsters, helping America wear guns at hogholsters.com. Use discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces. And finally, looking for tactical gear, outdoor gear, go to veteran-owned and operated uscombatgear.com. And with that, we're going to go ahead and call it a day. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program and encouraging your friends to do the same. We will be back tomorrow on Hump Day. So you folks take care, and we'll talk to you on the flip side.